Great. Hi, I'm Sarah Silva. In case did another talk a few weeks ago, so in case you don't know me, I thought I would go over the brief, not so brief, bits about our farm. We're in Sonoma County. We run 85 acres. I do pasture raised eggs, chicken, pork, lamb, and goat throughout the year. We practice intensive rotational grazing and try to keep to the regenerative agricultural principles as much as possible. And we do use grain with our chickens and our hogs, but the sheep and the goats only get our forage on pasture and our own produced hay. This is sort of the basics of my lane hen operation. We have chicken caravans. In 2016, I've upgraded the entire operation because we were spending a lot of time and money on collecting eggs, cleaning the nest boxes, dealing with parasites because we had wooden coops. We've always had them on trailers, but in 2016, I tested a caravan from Australia, and this really is one of the best coops I've ever used. The first one I've ever used that was created specifically for pastured poultry. We run a flock of 2,000 lane hens, or actually it's less than 2,000 lane hens. We start with 2,000 because of predation. That's never actually 2,000. And I raise my birds in the brooder that you see in the top corner there up to basically between 8 and 12 weeks. It really depends on the weather in the year and all the other minor details. I raise livestock guardian dogs that stay with these chickens so that they're protected. That's been a pretty big game changer because I'm no longer having to find where the foxes are getting in. Now I'm actually just making sure my big dogs don't go out after the foxes, which is a lot easier of a hole to find. And yeah, so I also raised broilers. Last year, I upgraded my broiler operation to these mobile range coops. This was also a game changer. I pretty much run this entire farm alone. To give you an idea of how much of a game changer these things are, I used to have 7 staff members. So this coop right here in the top right and the lower right are the mobile range coops. They're 40 feet long by 20 feet wide, about that. And you see that tractor in the bottom there, that's actually what pulls it. I have a smaller tractor that can pull it too, but I like using the bigger one. I throw it into creeper mode and I run in the back of it and just shoo my birds along. And the coop on the pictures on the right side is what it looks like inside the coop. And that's a nice fresh spring crop. That's a seeded no-till drill pasture that I run over with my broilers, sheep, and goats. And that's also my hay pasture. So knowing regulations, I'll say I've been doing this since 2008. And I'll say the one thing that has changed my business plan more often than anything else has been regulations. So it's really, really important, I think, to really, truly understand regulations on every level for many reasons, including just making sure you don't get in trouble. But more importantly, is it changes the costs of your business in many ways. Knowing, for example, your costs or your broiler operation really will depend on how you decide to sell your product. How you decide to sell your product will also depend on how you process your product. And all of these things sort of fall into place. You know, the biggest deal for me at first with the broilers was figuring out how to get the feed cheap enough so that I could afford to feed them a soy-free organic domestic grain. That was really expensive when I first started. The other, when we first started, we actually had a trailer that we would move from property to property. We would raise our birds Joe Soliton style. If you don't know what that is, I welcome to send a link to a picture of our old coops, which are just a chicken tractor with a, it's about 2 feet high, 2.5 feet high off the ground. They were 10 foot by 8 foot or 10 foot by 12 foot. I dragged them every day. I had 11 of those running at any given time for many years. Unfortunately, the cost of labor on those was so high that once we reached the threshold of all the cheap feed and processing, we started burning all our money on labor. So I had to find some kind of middle ground. So I got the feed prices down And then when we were doing the mobile processing on the farm, the other thing was the limitations on where we could sell the product. So you've got your CDF, you've got your USDA rules, you've got your CDFA rules, and you also have your state rules. So, you know, if you don't have a grasp on these rules, that can really change how you decide to sell things. So basically what happened is we were selling things off the farm directly. We would bag them, we would process the birds, we'd bag them. Maybe we were breaking the rules a little bit because we had CDFA rule. We had a connection with CDFA, and they had said basically as long as we crept under the 20,000 mark, we were good. So we were doing, I don't know, between my farm and my current business partner farm, which was actually a different farm at that time, we were doing something on the order of 3,000 birds a year, selling them directly off the farm. The problem was staffing that, getting reliable help. Every single time we had some really creative things. At that time, it was legal to have volunteers on your farm. We could get workman's compensation insurance for it, but we can trade them chicken is what we did. We come and process birds with us. We will teach you how to do it, and we'll give you some birds. It turns out we've helped a lot of farmers along the way, but it was really a bad business model. So, I suppose it was 2011, I realized that we were spending so much money on processing on the farm that it was something like $7 or $8 a bird just to process them. When you count the chicken price of the feed and the broiler and just the time it takes to raise them. Oh, to give you an idea, I raise Freedom Rangers. I have raised Cornish Cross. I've done all of it, the combinations of all these birds. I've tried a bunch of different birds. I'm actually pretty set on the Freedom Ranger at this point. I use the Color Yield Freedom Ranger, which is their newest line. And I'm currently running last year I ran 2,400. I'm actually going to be doing 5,000 this coming in 2020. So what I had to do is I needed to take my birds to a USDA processing plant because I had decided that I needed to be able to raise enough birds to get the feed prices really good. And I needed to be able to open my market to other customers. So in order to do that, I started taking my birds to, I guess it was Grimaud Farms in California. Their minimum was 350 birds per batch. I could be wrong about the exact minimum, but it was around 350 birds, 300 to 350 birds. That would allow me, they would package the birds, they'd slap a label on it. I could sell them to anyone, anywhere, pretty much. I could go to the farmers markets, I could go to restaurants, and I could go to institutions. That was a game changer. And I had my birds processed with the Grimaud packaging for a couple years, and that was, I think in 2013 or 14, Grimaud shut down suddenly. They had some problems, so we were having a hard time scheduling, but they basically shut down to all poultry processing, for chicken rather. I think they went duck only. And that was like a big slap in the face because you have your whole business plan and then a USDA plant shuts down on you. And that was really with like no notice. At least it didn't feel like there was any notice. So quickly I was trying to find a way to package and process my poultry to get my product out to the customers that I pretty much had already had sales for. So that was really tricky. So I found New American Poultry, which I had known about, but I was really reluctant to go there. It's a USDA plant, but I don't like the way they package stuff. But you can take any number of birds there, and it is what it is. I'll leave it at that. Then I finally found Squab Producers of California, which is actually a co-op. So you do have to, sign up to the co-op. But it's really one of the best USDA plants I've ever worked with. Unfortunately, their bags are just clear plastic bags. So if you plan to sell through a market or at a farmer's market, basically if you plan to sell these birds individually, packaged to a direct consumer, you must have an individual USDA bug listed on every single bag. Grimaud did that because they just slap labels on the top of their bags, but Squab doesn't. They just put them in bags, or they'll pack them institutional, which is just a bunch of chickens in a box with a big poultry bag in it. But in order to get my chickens out to the consumer, I had to design a bag, and I had to have the USDA bug, which you'll see if you look real closely, this little tiny thing here, oopsie. I had to get that bug on a piece of plastic that they could put my bags into. So what I have now is, you'll see these two types of bags. I have one for stewing hens, because I process all my laying hens as stewing hens. I process all my broilers as chicken. And so now I have a white bag that I had helped design when we did our original graphics for Green Star Farm. I sort of already knew what I was doing. So when we had the graphics done, we basically had all these things created as part of the plan. Sealed Air did the bags. They print the cryovac bags. They put the USDA stamp bug, establishment bug on the bag. And then what happens is that bag goes straight to the USDA plant. You don't ever get it in your hands. And that's because of, oh, I just forgot the name. I should have written it down. But basically, whenever you're working with the USDA, they need to make, the chain of custody needs to be traceable. So they need to know that I didn't get these bags, process them on my farm, and throw my chicken in those bags and seal them myself. I bought a really nice commercial cryovac vacuum packer. When I first started farming, I found a liquidated poultry plant. And so I have all these things, but I can't even use them because unless I go and get one of these CDFA license, which are actually really cost prohibitive, depending on your county, depending on your permits departments and your health department. There's just so many different regulations, your zoning. It's so difficult to put in a brick and mortar meat processing plant of any kind, poultry, CDFA license, or USDA license. All right. Yeah, so I'm gonna keep moving. And then there was the chicken eggs. So I raised the chickens, as I said, and this is, I'm pretty sure, the most current egg carton design that I have. I used to do plastic reusable cartons and just pulp cartons and throw labels on them. But when it really came down to the costs, it was much more expensive to do it that way. Printing labels, spending the time to throw a label on a carton, and just buying your cartons 200 at a time in a bundle, or 140 if you're doing flats, the numbers don't actually work out. Here's the catcher though. In order to get egg cartons like this, you have to buy, I think it's 16,000 that I buy at a time. That's about a year's worth of cartons. A couple years ago, I bought a $2,000 cargo bin that's 40 feet long. It fills it up about a third once a year, keeps them nice and clean and dry. I save a lot of money doing that. I also put all my dry feed in it. It's the only rat-proof, cross my fingers, area on the farm. So that's why I went with doing it this way instead of doing the labels, because if you're not doing just a couple cartons a week, you're actually spending a lot of money on those cartons. And so that's where you're really going to lose money. So that's the first version of the carton right there. It's a little different looking from now. When I made this label, I was really simple. I made a picture and I sent it to CDFA. I just said, hey, can someone look at this and tell me if I've got everything? They were so sweet. They did. Sonoma Department of Food and Ag, our Sonoma County Food and Ag Department. I did the same thing. I just sent them the thing and said, hey, can you see anything wrong with this? They saw little tiny things. I obviously, I think I mentioned that I do give the chickens soy-free organic grain, but because I'm not certified, I can't put it anywhere. I was hoping I could just put it on the inside saying, because it's a fact, right? I am feeding them Modesto Milling organic grain. even if it's a fact, you can't say it. You can't use that O word. It's forbidden unless you have certification to do it. So I didn't add that there, but the truth is the eggs sell really well without that. Coast Packaging Company, I did make the mistake of trying, Coast Packaging Company had a fire when I first started needing egg cartons, when I realized that the packaging was necessary to order them in larger quantities. Coast Packaging had a fire, so I couldn't use them because they were out many, many months, and I needed the egg cartons within a couple weeks. I think they have a 6 to 8 week turnaround, so that's something to keep in mind when you're ordering through Coast Packaging. Is they really do, they are really the best, and they are the only ones that I know of in California and maybe in the United States. I tried someone out of the United States. No, I tried someone within the United States. It turns out he had them printed out of the United States. They misspelled something, which was a logo. They should not have changed the logo. So we never even looked at the logo. I mean, it was just a nightmare. So we got stickers and stuck them on the logo that they misprinted. So I'm just there, and it wasn't in the proof. That was what was weird. It's like they printed the, it was a nightmare. My recommendation is whenever you're looking for things like this, always ask another farmer, ask your ombudsman, ask people in your local community. Don't go on the internet and just try to find these things. I've had the same problem with hay. All right, so my egg washer. This egg washer, the right side, we purchased when we first started farming, when we went over 1,000 birds, and that was in, I don't know, 2000 and probably 10. That was the right side. The left side you see here, this is the packing and washing, the packing and weighing section. I was trying to find a mouse, but it's not working. So the right side is the packing table, which actually has a scale in the back. You can candle your eggs. We actually look at our eggs under a light that runs underneath that little thing on the right before they ever go in. The eggs go down this conveyor belt. There's these beautiful brushes. It runs water and sanitizer over them. I use Oxine sanitizer, which is a OMRI approved sanitizer. They come down into the chute on the left, the scale weighs them, and then there's these little tiny kickers that go, and they kick them down to here. There's a jiggler, it jiggles the eggs standing up. I have a little vacuum packer, which you see hanging there. I have a 30 and a 6, a 12, a 6 and a 30, but I use the 12 because you can pack turns out you can pack a 6 and a 30 with a 12. So the model I have right there is listed at the bottom. These go up for sale every once in a while. You'll see them for cheap. Look out for them. My first egg washer, besides myself in a sink, was I took an old dishwasher. I removed the heating element out of it. I put it on a heating source that was reliable, that I knew what the temperature was. And I think at one point I even used whatever the chlorine ratio that they said was 200 parts per million, maybe is what the number is. It's been a long time. And I washed the eggs in a dishwasher. Works really well. Top rack though. Top rack works the best. And this was an egg washer that was probably circa 2000. So, you might want to look for an older one because I don't know about the modern ones. It may or may not work as well. Karen had said something about the Julian dates. You've got to have a lot of different information, right? So, and you also want to keep records. I use this calendar, and I love this calendar because right next to the date on every single day has how many days of the year it's passed, which is your Julian date, how many days of the year you have left. I use the academic one because for CDFA reporting, we report our numbers at the end of July 1st of every year to the end of June of every year, June 30th. So, my dogs are making noise. Hopefully they won't do anything. So this I get on Amazon, and I just pasted what they said is in there because I really think this is one of the best. I have a little label gun that has I buy sell-by stickers, and every time I go pack eggs, I change it according to this date, and then I put it on that calendar, and then I always have a really good record. It's simple. It hangs in our egg room. It's just a nice little thing. As far as commercial, there's other things that CDFA does, and I just mentioned this because this was something that isn't well known is the commercial feed license. This particular one was for goat milk, but if you're going to be selling a product that's not a food product, there's this idea, this concept of, like, if you're producing grain, you have a commercial feed license through CDFA. Again, I sent my label over to CDFA and they helped me sort it out. Not only did they help me sort it out, I had those lab tests I didn't know how to decipher. They helped me figure out what had to be listed on the bucket. This is basically what you would see on your feed bag, but I had to put it on my milk bucket. And because, once again, buying a couple hundred or thousand pails was cheaper than buying them individually, I mean, like on a major scale. It was like $20-something to buy a 3-gallon bucket on Amazon, or even bulk if I bought them more. And I could pay for them like $7 or $8. Maybe it was $6. I don't even remember. It was just such an astounding difference that volume is a big deal. So if you can buddy up with someone when it comes to that kind of stuff, or figure out how to budget it, I highly recommend it. You're going to save a lot of money. So I put this in here as a joke almost, because something that people don't often talk about is insurance for your processing and your laying egg operation. This right here is a questionnaire that I have filled out a number of times for farm liability insurance. These are the kind of questions you need to be able to answer when it comes to getting your insurance for your egg or chicken processing operations. These are things you should be keeping in mind. These are things like, there's an egg quality assurance program. You know, there's, are they candled? Do they need to be candled? If you say no, that's okay. You just need to explain why you're not candling your eggs. What inspections are you doing? These are really good questions to be thinking about when you're designing your egg program or your poultry, any poultry processing program. So yeah, so this was a cut and paste from one of the insurance brokers emails for doing the last time I filled one out for ranch insurance. Okay, I think that's sort of it. I think I have one more. Oops, sorry. There's some resources. I didn't bring those up before, but that is sort of the summary of some resources that I find helpful. All right, I think that's it.